Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Be Lifted Up, your guide to living an abundant life. I'm Alfred Edmond Jr., and I am so blessed and happy to be here with our guest co-host, Dr. Michelle Boone Thornton. She's been on the show a number of times, but now she's riding in the co-pilot seat with me. Welcome back, Dr. Michelle. It's so great to see you.
Thank you so much. You know, this seat feels kind of good, riding in this co-pilot seat. I like it. I like it a lot.
I know I like having you next to me, that's for sure. This is really great. Listen, today's show topic is like right up the alley of what Be Lifted Up is all about. When we talk about your guide to living an abundant life, we're talking about faith and finance. And of course, we discuss wealth in a variety of different ways. We talk about mental health, and which is your realm. We know wealth is many, many different things, but our core conversation on this show is about faith and finance. And so we're asking today, how can I grow wealth in this economy? I think it's going to be a great conversation to have. I mean, what say you as we approach this, not only as an important topic in general, but from a position of being a faith-driven person?
Absolutely, absolutely. When you look at the Bible, and it depends on who's teaching it. We're kind of taught to be like these little peasants and these little, people that don't really like money is evil and this, that, and the other. But I'm so glad for this program and for the people that we have, so that you can see something totally different. I'm excited about it, and I cannot wait to get started.
Okay, so everybody get ready, because we have a great guest. You're listening to Be Lifted Up, your guide to living an abundant life. Stay tuned. We will be right back. Welcome back to Be Lifted Up, your guide to living an abundant life. I'm Alfred Edmond Jr. here with our special guest host, Dr. Michelle Boone Thornton. And we're talking about a topic that is kind of core to the reason this show exists. We're asking the question, how can I grow wealth in this economy? And Dr. Boone Thornton, you said something in the open that I think is right on point. Again, I'm someone who was raised in the church. On the one ear, we hear, like you said, money is evil. That's not what the word says, but we hear that. But even if we don't believe that, there's a part of the faith community that almost feels like, I don't want to make too much money. I don't want to be too successful, because I don't, I don't want people to think a certain way, that I'm not, really faith driven, and I don't have my priorities in order. Then there's, of course, the other side that says, if you ain't rich, God must not be blessing you. Why aren't you? You must not be doing something right. And we know that the answer in the word, which I always tell people, when you're confused, go right to the word, is probably somewhere in the middle. But you just make a great point about how often, even as people of faith, we get conflicting messages about our relationship with money and what we're supposed to do with money and how we're supposed to feel about money. I don't know, what was your experience as you built your relationship with money?
Absolutely, that was my experience too, but now that I'm older, I understand that we serve a God who wants nothing but the best for us. So that other mindset isn't the right one, but I was raised in a mindset like that. So, if you had too much, then, especially if you were a minister, then that meant you were spending the church's money on yourself and not trying to grow your kingdom. Oh, so wrong that was.
So wrong. And again, like I said, we have these misperceptions about what people in the church are doing with their money. We have misperceptions about, what pastors do with their money. And then we often have really not healthy ideas about what we should be doing with our money. Like you said, there's so many points in the Bible. I tell people, as a business financial journalist, God he's not measuring you by how much money you have. He's measuring you by what you do with it. Whether you talk about the widow and the widow's mite giving all that she had, and the word saying, her gift was more valuable because she gave all she had, even though it was a little. Or, of course, the famous parable of the talents, where God rewarded for the master, rewarded the servants based on how prosperous they were, based on, I left this with you, what did you do with it? And of course, the servant that buried it in the ground got punished. So I always tell people, when you're confused, go to the word. Don't worry about what somebody said in this ear. But you're right. What my Bible keeps telling me, no, it's not about how much you have, it's what you do with what you have. Not just your money, but your gifts, your talents, everything that you have.
Everything. He judges our heart. Absolutely.
Yes, yes. So again, we have the perfect guest who I'm sure is going to take us to church and to school on this subject. We are welcoming to the show Pastor Dexter B. Jenkins. He's a faith-based financial mentor. He's a real estate entrepreneur. Yes, he's a pastor. He's a speaker. He's a podcaster. This dude is the dude. Welcome to the show, Pastor Jenkins.
Y'all make me sound good. Thank you both for having me. I'm excited about being on the show today.
So just tell us a little bit about your journey as we're introducing you to the Be Lifted Up radio audience. Tell us about your path to becoming Pastor Dexter B. Jenkins.
Yeah, well, I grew up in New Haven, Connecticut, son of a barber. Mom was a factory worker, but my mother was a woman of tremendous faith. So I tell people I spend every Sunday in church from the time I can remember until the time I turned 18 or so, when they sort of said you could do your own thing. So I tell people I got my faith side from my mom, but then my dad was a barber, and since I'm an only child, I spent a lot of my time in a barbershop. So that's where I caught the entrepreneurial hustle and bustle, where I saw men and women, standing there with a dream in their heart and clippers in their hand, building a life. And so that rubbed off on me on the entrepreneurial side. And then my dad was always a big proponent of buying real estate, and so all of that sort of wrapped up into who I am as a entrepreneur, so on and so forth. And then, I was an athlete, so I had a basketball scholarship to Northeastern University back in the 80s. And then always, that faith thing was always there. And then God called me into the ministry. My wife and I was ordained in 2009. So for 2009 and 2012, I stayed at the church I was at, and then we started our own church, Fellowship Christian Church in Boston in 2012. So that's sort of me, but I never lost and then what I did say is I also sold life insurance and mutual funds for about 20 years, and from my 20s right up until I became a pastor. And so you wrap all of that up into my story. And so as I began to start pastoring, what I noticed that, and we were talking about it prior to us getting on, is that a lot of my people were struggling financially. I had a couple people lose their houses on my watch. And I'm like, I know this stuff. When y'all didn't come to me, well, because people were embarrassed. And so it was something that I really need to start talking about more, not more than prayer and the word, obviously, but to mix that in, because that's a very important part of people being discipled as well.
That's phenomenal. One of the things that you mentioned was really, it was your upbringing that kind of put you where you are, the platform that you are today. And when it comes to finances, that's one of the things, we as a people really don't talk about. You don't talk about your money. I think about when I met my husband. Joker didn't have nothing, but I didn't know. You're right. I was like, but we didn't talk about that. We talked about kids, we talked about work, we talked about house, but we didn't talk about money. Even though we were making these tremendous investments, house, car, this, that, we really didn't talk about it. So what you're doing is phenomenal.
Well, it's something, it's almost like taboo to even talk about it, and so I think, you talk about relationships. I tell people there are 3 decisions that you have to make that are important. Number 1, who are you going to serve? Number 2, who you're gonna marry, and number 3, how you're gonna make your money. And so when you put those 3 M's together, now that one in the middle, you talk with your husband, we don't even talk about, hey, what's your thought about building a business or being in debt or not being in debt or starting those are conversations we're not having. And so, I tell people, if you can just pump the brakes for a few seconds, turn the love gas off, and let's sit down and have some serious conversations about something, because, many people have financial problems in their marriages, and it sometimes ends in divorce, and so I just think it's something that we really need to talk about.
Listen, you're speaking in my wheelhouse. I've been married multiple times. Okay, so, and again, as a person of faith, people are like, oh, well, how did this happen? The inability to come together and talk about money, I won't say it was the factor, but it was a common thread.
A factor.
And a common factor. I've been married multiple times. And so the irony is, on the one hand, we're doing better now. It's either
Right.
mere fact that we have people like you on the show says we're doing better now. But again, in our upbringing, on the one hand, as Dr. Michelle said, as we all saying, nobody wanted to talk about it.
Right.
On the other hand, in the word, that money, wealth, property, it's like you can't get anywhere in the Bible without that being part of the conversation.
Yeah.
So as I became an adult, and I'm like you, my mother, she was like, after football season when I was 16, you going to church, boy.
Right.
But then when I went off to college, she's like, okay, you've been raised in the church, you figure it out.
It's on you now. Yeah,
it's on you now.
Right.
But this whole idea that I want to return to as we come back for the next segment of, if we really connect the word to this conversation, then we have to talk about it. It's not an optional exercise.
Right.
So listen, everybody, you can tell we fired up. I'm a business and financial journalist, so I'm fired up. Sometimes we have a mental health expert, and Dr. Michelle's we're in her wheelhouse, but I'm fired up because we have Dexter B. Jenkins, pastor, financial mentor, real estate investor, on Be Lifted Up, your guide to living an abundant life. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Be Lifted Up, your guide to living an abundant life. And we have Pastor Dexter with us today. I can just feel the money hairs. No, I can just feel that this is going to be phenomenal. You talked about, when you get married, money is something you don't talk about. I can remember I didn't have much money. My husband didn't have much money. So that was just not a conversation for us. So talk to me a little bit more about that. You said something about who you serve, who you marry, and the last part.
Right. Yeah. I teach there are three major decisions everyone has to make. Number one, who's going to be your master? Now, obviously, I'm coming from a Christian pastor standpoint, so I'm saying Jesus is Lord. That's one. And then we talk about who's going to be your mate? Who are you going to do life with? You want to be married 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and particularly in the Black community, we really want to lift up marriages, and have strong marriages that where we can say, my mom was married 40 years, my dad was married 50 years, those type of things. So I talk about that. And then the last one is how you going to make your money? What are you going to do with your career? What businesses you're going to build? Real estate you're going to purchase. And so we wrap all of that up into a lot of the message that we talk about, because I do think it's important. And I tell people all the time, I believe that as particularly us Black folk, we do Sunday well. It's Monday through Saturday where we struggling at, and so we're dancing, and it just depends what type of church you go to. You may be dancing, screaming, shouting, hollering, all that, but then I'm losing my house, and I'm like, okay, something is off here, and so really just trying to sprinkle in. Obviously with the word, because I've always said that the Bible is an instruction manual on how to live life.
One of the reasons I think that we're doing better, is that I think church leaders, we have a couple of generations of church leaders like you who are faith leaders, but do have professional standing.
Correct.
My pastor is an accountant by day. He's
right.
And so it not only creates a talent base in faith leadership, not across the board, but in key faith leaders who, one, have the education to bring this to their ministry. People with your background also manage churches better. I mean, one of the reasons I'm a member of my church, it's an extremely well managed church from the standpoint of the use of the resources of the church. And I tell people, when I look at people like my grandfather, who was a Baptist minister, passed away in 2008 at 97, like his generation couldn't have that. There was no way he was going to have the financial education, and he wasn't getting anywhere near Wall Street. He was getting nowhere near. I mean, you're talking his generation wasn't even allowed to go to finish high school.
Right.
And so I always tell people, we need to show grace in general, but we need to show grace to previous generations of faith leaders, especially since they're the ones that got us free. Let's face it, those are the leaders that got us free, both during the civil rights movement and before that. Let's give them credit for getting us where we are. but now it's a new day. We got to do a new thing. And so, so I'm interested in those things that positioned you, and then moved you. The Spirit moved you to say, it's not enough for me to feed them on Sunday. I have financial education and skills and experiences that can serve this community. So talk about your mindset in terms of becoming a financial mentor in their faith-based space.
Well, I think going back to what you said about giving honor where honor is due, because the Bible tells us to do that, and so we honor the future generations who came before us, and thank God they gave us. My mother, she's a woman of great wisdom, but she went to school, back to college after I graduated from college. So she probably just she like maybe 45 or 50 when she's going back to school. But she was just a woman of great common sense. Things that I look at people that I'm like, you didn't know that you should show up to a meeting on time and start stuff early, and things that people, so those soft skills, she was phenomenal at that. And so I give honor where honor is due. Your grandfather and all that, they gave us a God consciousness, which we need. Start with that. And then now they passed the baton on to us. And then, like you said, we went to school, we had certain experiences. And so now I'm looking at, okay, the church is not just a place where people need to grow spiritually, but they also need to grow and be well-rounded. So one of the things I always talk about is this thing called balance. I said, you need to have balance in 4 areas. Number 1, spiritually, physically, relationally, and financially. So my congregation know that I preach across those 4 in and out all year long. I'm obviously spiritually is about your relationship with Christ, but physically, I've been on this health thing lately because I've been to too many funerals, and I'm looking at all of us walking in on canes and people dying early, and I'm just like, hold up, this has got to stop. And me as a pastor, I have a platform to speak on those type of things. And then so go physically, you go relationally, you go physically, spiritually, physically, relationally. Then I talk about the cross is both vertical, but it's horizontal. Horizontal means that I should be getting along with my wife and my kids and my grandkids. So we talk about that. And then we talk about finances. It's last, but it's definitely not least, because our finances runs through all 3.
Yes.
So you have to weave all those things in. And our congregation does 2 things. We read 1 chapter in the book of Proverbs every day, and we read 1 chapter in the New Testament every day. And if you read the book of Proverbs, financial advice is just all through that book. So
that's the original success book, the Proverbs. That's the original. No success book you can read today cannot be traced back to Proverbs.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and so what you're saying is this, and what I'm saying is this: if that's the original success book, why aren't more of us successful?
Right.
Absolutely.
You talk about those 4 areas. And it's interesting, and I know we're coming to the end of the segment shortly, but I give a speech as a business and financial journalist. I give like one of my lectures. It's called the 4 pillars of abundance.
Okay.
4 pillars of wealth, and it's physical wealth, mental health, financial health, which I include with business and entrepreneurship, and relationship health.
Right.
That to really achieve sustainable wealth, at least 3 or 4 of those pillars has got to be stable.
They've got to be there.
All 4. And then what's the foundation those pillars stand for? Again, it's to what you said. What do you believe?
Right.
Because depending on how strong that foundation is, those pillars will either be stable or shaky. And like you said, I'm a man of faith. So my foundation is my spiritual faith, with the cornerstone being Jesus. But it's amazing how I talk to people of faith who are in the financial space that says, you got to get those 3 or 4 areas right. And then what is it standing on?
Right.
Listen, I'm already on fire. I know Dr. Michelle's trying to get her punches in too. This is Be Lifted Up, your guide to living an abundant life. We're here with Pastor Dexter Jenkins, faith leader, financial mentor. We will be right back talking about building wealth in this economy. Hold tight. We got more to come. Welcome back to Be Lifted Up, your guide to living an abundant life. I'm here with our special guest host, Dr. Michelle Boone Thornton, and we are here with the man of the hour, faith-based financial mentor, Pastor Dexter B. Jenkins, talking about building wealth in this economy. Dr. Michelle, Pastor Dexter had me jumping out of my chair because, this is the life I've been living during my 4 decades as a business and financial journalist with Black Enterprise. So I need to calm myself down. But listen, I definitely, Dr. Michelle, I just want you to weigh in because obviously this has implications, far beyond just physical money.
Absolutely. And I'm going to start from, when I was growing up. And I'm kind of young, not too old, but not too young, all that kind of stuff. And I come from a background where the goal was not to own your own business. Nobody ever talked to us about that, but it was just to get a good job with a good company and work yourself to death. And then you would have money to retire and live on. It's not true, Pastor, but a lot of people still have that mindset.
Right.
So how do you change that for people?
Well, I think what we've been talking about, go to the word. The word points us to everything. And, a major component of the word is ownership. A major component of the word is, in particular, really real estate ownership. The Bible is about land. You think about Genesis chapter 1, where it talked about he created the earth. Well, earth is land. And then he takes the people to the promised land, and so it's a fundamental principle within the Bible of ownership and land. And so as we're talking about building wealth in this economy, and really any economy, it starts with having an ownership mentality. And I think our people on some level did have an ownership mentality, but it may not have been owning the right things. And so I think as you begin to open up people's mindsets and talk, and we're just in a different time nowadays than where your parents were, my parents were, our grandparents were, where there's just so many opportunities, but you really have to open up your mindset and your thinking and become more aware. And as you become more aware of things, it allows you to see opportunities that you may not have seen in the past.
People of faith, and I'm talking about previous generations, and I sometimes I'm worried because they had less opportunities, but they saw and hoped for more for themselves. It's ironic that they thought in terms of what can we do when everything was telling them that you can't do anything.
Right.
We have more opportunity than any previous generation. If my grandparents had the opportunity I have now, they would be, I don't know what they'd be doing.
Right.
And so I think about, as you said, what the word shows us about wealth creation, particularly today. I grew up because I was growing up in a working poor household and a working class community. And I've learned that people have generally 4 dominant approaches or personalities around money. You're either a saver, a giver, a spender, or an investor.
Right.
There's actually a book called The 4 Financial Languages that one of my mentees wrote, and I wrote the foreword to her book. It was about those 4 kind of primary ways we relate to money. Right. I know because of my upbringing, I came out of a saver mindset. Mm-hmm. But my mother, we were good at managing money to the penny, saving that money. And it wasn't until I've been at Black Enterprise for 15 years, I was still living in that saver mindset until something hit me about the parable about the talents. The servant that buried the talent and got punished, that's a saver mentality.
Right.
And my current boss, the son of the founder, Earl Graves Jr., says, saving is good, but you can't save your way to wealth. Sooner or later, you're going to have to invest. You're going to invest in a career, invest in a business, invest in real estate, invest in the stock market, probably all of the above. Right. But it's good that we come, generally speaking, Black people come from a culture of saving. But if that's all you do, and to your point, Dr. Michelle, you work hard, you save your money, and then maybe you keel over at age 70 and you haven't done anything with it.
It's true.
So when you talk about that, you're as a financial mentor, you talk about investing, and there's more to managing money than spending it and saving it.
Yeah, but because what Mr. Graves taught you is a fundamental wealth principle. No one has ever become wealthy saving money. Now, I'm a big proponent of saving because I think it builds a discipline in you. Yes. Not to be able to spend everything that comes into your hand. If you look at Proverbs chapter 6, the Bible talked about an ant. He said you can get wisdom from an ant. An ant tells you to save. An ant is saving up all summer for the winter. And so a lot of times people are not saving up for the winters of our lives, meaning there's a time when you're not going to be able to go out and work, and in some cases not even want to. And so the saving component gets to do that, but then it becomes, once I save, what do I do with it? And so now what I've got to do is I've got to put what I've saved into an asset that's going to multiply my money and just not give me 0% or 1 or 2% with it. The bank knows this, so they're taking our money. That's why money is called currency. So we'll go put it in the bank, and then they'll keep it moving. So they're investing it. They're investing it in other areas. They're putting it back out for debt, credit cards and student loans, all that stuff. And so, you have to watch what people who are wealthy are doing in order to see how to get ahead and be successful. And most people who are wealthy are not big time savers. They're big time investors, either in, like you said, businesses or in real estate, because real estate has phenomenal tax benefits and so on and so forth. And then they're also very big into investing in themselves, because that's your biggest investment.
Yes.
Absolutely. But when you talk about investment, like at what age? Because, people that I know who are close to retirement, they really can't stop working because they got bills to pay. They still got the mortgage and the car notes and all of that. So at what age? I mean, when does this start? And when is it too late?
Well, I think you should start as soon as you start working. Because what the greatest thing that you have when you start early, investing in early, is time. And so now you can get compound interest working on your behalf. If you ever heard of something called the rule of 72, it talks about, taking the interest rate that you receive on your money, divide that into number 72. And that tells you how long it takes for your money to double and compound. Well, and that's what you want your money to do, is to compound. So the earlier you can start, the better off. Now, as you get older, and you said something very important, because a lot of times what we've been trained up is to have a mentality of, I got to pay my bills, pay my bills, pay my bills. Wealthy people don't think like that. They think about, let me build wealth first, and then the wealth that I build will be enough to pay off my bills. And so it's a very different mindset that you really have to reorient your mind to start thinking about. See, the goal is wealth, and when I hit wealth, I have more than enough to pay my bills. But if I'm focusing on just paying my bills, I may not get to wealth. And so it's all on your focus and your target. So when I'm talking to people, say, 'cause I'm 55. And so I have people who come to me and say, Dexter, I don't have much saved up. I said, well, it's not too late for you, because in this economy, you can create wealth fairly quickly for yourself. You got people going on YouTube making millions of dollars, and you're like, YouTube, how they making a video? And so it's not. See, when you're older, what you have to do is you got to tap into your creativity. And so, is it you making an online course? Is it something you can sell? Because Black folk don't like to sell stuff. We're scared of that. And so now when I'm older, what I have to do is become more resourceful, and you have to recognize you don't have to be an expert. You just have to be 1 or 2 steps ahead of the people you're teaching.
Yes.
And if you're that, you can market that and you can sell that, and then you can make wealth fairly quickly. And so I tell people, I said, listen, if you're going to increase your income and build wealth, you got to do this. You got to increase your awareness of what you can do, and then maybe learn some new skills. And I've taken that off of 2 Kings chapter 4, when there was a widow who had two sons. She was in debt, and the creditor was coming to take her 2 sons, and they were going to imprison them until they paid the debt off. And she goes to the prophet, and the prophet says to her, hey, what do you have in your house? See, most of us don't value what we have in our house. We don't value the experiences and things that we've had that we can go and put out there in the marketplace, and somebody will pay it for. So she said, number 1, what do you have in the house? So that was, her awareness was raised. And number 2, he said, go out there and sell. And we don't like to sell stuff. And I'm just like, dude, sales is the fastest way for you to create income. And now that you create the income, now you pay your bills off, Dr. Michelle. Now you can invest.
Well, you make another point about, I'm going crazy because even as an experienced financial journalist and somebody who would know better, but then the shutdown of the pandemic, a whole bunch of stuff came to me. For example, I was like, half the stuff you have in this house is not of value to you, but could be of value to somebody else. That is hoarding. Hoarding is wrong. If it's not blessing you here, why are you holding on to it?
Keep it
So
moving.
whether you give it away, whether you throw it away, or whether you sell it, it's not blessing anybody because it's sitting in your closet. I'm talking about clothes that were practically brand new, I hadn't worn. So this whole idea of, that it's not wealth if it's not flowing. Like you said, currency. If it's sitting stagnant, no matter what it was worth when you paid for it, it's not blessing you and it's not blessing anybody else. So this whole idea of what we're talking about is mind transformation. Again, be ye transformed, and we think if that's a one-time thing.
No.
But it's continual, especially as we get older. You got to be continually reinvent yourself, the way you see things, reinvent the perception of opportunity. Listen, I could go on and on, but the idea is that we got to be open to opportunity and God's replenishing. Can't replenishing the things around us if you won't let Him.
And opportunity looks different. One of my definitions. Got a minute. One of my definitions is opportunity. So you got to be able to see it and then take advantage of it. A lot of times, because it looks different than what we've been trained to look at, we just go. That's not opportunity. I'm like, it's an opportunity because it's out there in the marketplace. And so I just think that we just got to become more aware of the opportunities around us. And then this other word, have the courage to step into it.
Yes. Listen, guys, be lifted up, your guide to living an abundant life. Dr. Michelle Boone Thornton and I are being seriously taken to school by Pastor Dexter B. Jenkins. We will be right back. Don't go away.
Okay, and we are back. Be lifted up, and we are with Dexter Jenkins, Pastor Dexter Jenkins. He has given us
Stop. I'm sorry. Let's start that again, please.
Yes, please.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm counting us in.
I wasn't sure I was speaking.
No, you're speaking first.
Okay.
I'm just counting us in.
Okay.
So this is all you. Right? 5, 4.
Yes, Pastor Dexter, the information that you gave was just so phenomenal. It just got me my head is spinning. But when you talked about beware of opportunities, because we're kind of in like this mindset of what money looks like and what work looks like and how to earn money, we don't see the opportunities that are out there. You said something about, people on YouTube make money. Some of us would never even think about that. And then having the courage to do it. Even when we see that people are doing it, we don't have the courage to do it. Talk to us about that.
Well, I think going back to just some of the things that my wife and I have conversations about, and we look at how people are making money. We're like, how are you making money with that? A woman gets on TV and, she's in her kitchen and she has 2 million followers. And then because of the following, YouTube pays her money off ads and so on and so forth. And is what she would do normally. She's just cooking dinner for her family, but she's turned the camera on. And so this is what we got to understand, Dr. Michelle, is this. Attention is the new currency of the day.
That's powerful.
Meaning if you could get people's attention, and then now other people will say, okay, you can get people's attention. Now you can monetize that. Got it? And so now here comes the monetization. And then now once you get the access, now you begin to invest in all the things we're talking about. And so it really just begins to get you thinking about, wow, with the expertise I have, for instance, so you're a mental health expert. Man, you should be on YouTube and writing books. I'm not saying you're not, because we're just meeting one another. But, just having these conversations, and there are people out there. It's a need for people to have a peace of mind nowadays.
And the thing is also, first of all, and the word says this, you get rewarded by how many people you serve.
Correct.
So if you figure out what you do well and what you like to do, and then you come up with different ways to do, like you said, do what you feel drawn to do, called to do anyway.
Called to do, exactly.
Then it's just saying, well, yes, I could do it using Dr. Michelle as an example, and I happen to know she does many of these things, if not all these things.
Right, already.
I can serve one-on-one with a patient. I can put what I know in a book for patients who will never get to meet me face-to-face. I can share key pieces of information on social media that people would benefit from. I can do an online class. I can do a podcast. You know, it's still one person, but you're finding so many ways to serve people.
Exactly.
And being a person of faith, God put us here to serve.
Correct.
Jesus' example was about service. But I want to circle back to what Dr. Michelle said about courage.
Yes.
Because God knows we're afraid. Every
Right.
person that God called to do stuff in the Word was like, me? Nah, you don't want me.
Right.
Nah, I'm
Right.
afraid.
Right.
But faith is doing it despite being afraid. Courage
Right.
is not really being brave. It's like, I'm not brave, but I'm gonna do it anyway
I'm gonna step out anyway.
because I trust.
Right.
You know? And that's incredibly important in business and financial efforts, because most things that entrepreneurs try, they don't know what's going to work until they try it.
Well, most of them don't, you know, and I think our school system has trained us to be afraid to try things.
True.
Got it? So here you are, you know, if there's 10 questions on a test, you know, you want to get a minimum of, you know, 70 or 80. Well, that means I can only mess up 2 or 3 times. Well, in business, you want to mess up a lot of times. You can have there'll probably be a lot more that go wrong than goes right. And so that mentality of us being afraid to try and afraid to make a mistake has been ingrained in us. And I tell people, I say, listen, you're going to make a lot of mistakes, but it's in the learning takes place when you make mistakes, because you really learn more from your mistake than you do from your victories.
Absolutely.
You know,
and then your mistakes is really R&D. I tell people your mistakes is R&D.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Well,
I'm a big believer of reading biographies in general and business biographies in particular, because every one of them will tell you how many times they screwed up. It went totally wrong.
Right.
I interviewed, you see over my shoulder, I kind of cover a Black enterprise of Reginald F. Lewis, who I interviewed as a young girl.
Yes.
And when you read that book and see how he had nervous breakdowns along the way because things weren't going his way, but only you remember that. No, when you succeed, they only remember that you won. They don't know about the battles you fought together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I this is what I believe. Courage is a muscle that can be cultivated. It's just like, you know, it's like when you go to the gym. I've seen some of your pictures, and so I see you work out. You know, and I work out pretty well myself. You know, but it's see, every time you face something that you're afraid of, you're doing what I call a courage curl. And whether I win or whether I lose, I'm building that courage muscle. You know, and you know, I grew up in neighborhoods where you at least had fear is a bully. And if you're not careful, it will, I'm gonna say this, it will punk you. I grew up in neighborhoods where you at least had to fight. You had to at least face the bully. And so, you know, I believe that as we at least face those things that potentially intimidate us, it builds our courage. So whether I win or whether I lose, I've grown my strength muscle, my courage muscle, and it will allow me to go forward and do the things that I believe God has called for me to do.
That's so true. That's so true. And I like the part that you said about when you take a test. You know, it's like you penalized, and it really stands out what you missed versus what you got right. And so we live in that mentality that we are afraid to miss anything, because that's what people are going to look at, what we did wrong. Right. That's what's coming to the forefront. And so that courage piece is just phenomenal across the board, any kind of way.
It's an intangible of wealth building. It's courage. You've got to, everybody, I don't care who you've talked to, whether they built a church or a business, or courage was at the core of what they stepped. Dr. Martin Luther, Black History Month, well, you sure be something else. But, you know, they had to have courage. And that doesn't mean that they weren't afraid. It's just that they said, you know what, I'm afraid, I'm going to look it right in the face. And when I look it in the face, see, fear dissipates, fear dissipates when you look it in the face.
Yes.
But as long as you keep running from it, it's going to continue to dominate you. And so I just believe one of the intangibles of wealth building, entrepreneurship, real estate investing, whatever you want to do, is you really have to develop your courage muscle.
You know, the other thing that I found over my years, again, I've spent nearly 40 years interviewing successful entrepreneurs, interviewing wealthy people, mostly Black, but not even just Black. And the one thing that they say they have in common, what I found that they had in common, was this capacity to delay gratification.
Right.
When you talk about between spenders, givers, investors, and savers, that whatever form of wealth creation you choose, if you want to be a real estate investor, there's got to be a party that's willing to ride it out, because it's not a liquid investment. If you want to invest in the stock market, over time, yes,
it'll grow.
It's going to grow. If you're building a business, it takes time to but often, especially now and I'm guilty of it too, when you can just order and it's on your doorstep tomorrow, and you want this instant gratification.
Exactly.
But wealth creation in this economy, any economy, requires you to be okay with, yes, I want it, but I don't have to have it now, because there's this other thing that I want that's going to take time for me to get. And I know, Dr. Michelle, you wouldn't be Dr. Michelle Thornton with the success that you had if you're like, nah, if I can't have it this afternoon, I ain't taking that class. I'm not going to that course. I'm not getting that degree. I'm not writing that book. So when we talk about wealth across the board, in terms of this ability to delay gratification, just to say, something as simple as, I want those $200 shoes, but instead of putting it on a credit card and paying 20% interest to get them, how about if I save $20 a week and just buy them outright and get the shoes? But this cultivation of, I gotta have it now, I gotta have it now, I gotta have it now. I don't know if that's your experience, Dr. Michelle.
Absolutely. It's like we're in this urgency of now kind of season in life. And I'll have people that say, well, I went to a therapist that didn't work. Well, they went to one appointment.
Right.
You want to deal with something that you over 20 years in one appointment. It's not going to work.
Oh, Pastor, I know you get that. Well, I prayed yesterday. I prayed on this. Why?
You're like, where's the answer? It's not here yet. and I think part of the reason God delays things for us is because we have to get ready for it.
Preparation.
Because there's a muscle that you're not ready. If I dropped it on you tomorrow, could you handle it? So when I'm talking about wealth, it's not enough just to get it. I want to keep it and maintain it, but more importantly, I want to pass it on. And there's just a muscle that need to be developed spiritually, mentally, emotionally, in order for me to keep it. And so I just think that that's just a message of you're in a development stage, and just recognize that.
Before we let you go, we run out of time. We could do another show with you. We might have to bring this brother back, but let's cross the bridge when we get to it. What's the best way for people to stay in contact with you? Give us your social media handles.
I'm Dexter B. Jenkins across the board. So I like to hang out on LinkedIn mostly. Most LinkedIn and probably Instagram are two, the ones I'm probably most active on. So if you go Dexter B. Jenkins, you'll find me across the board, but I really hang out in those two venues. And then I want to plug, I'm doing a real estate conference on April 27th. It's a Saturday from 10 to 5. We call it the Wealth Creation Summit, Real Estate Wealth Creation Summit. So if they go to my website, dexterbjenkins.com, they can get some information there on that as well.
That is perfect for this show. You're listening to Be Lifted Up, your guide to living an abundant life. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Be Lifted Up. And we just heard from Pastor Dexter. I'm telling you, he just had so many nuggets he was just throwing out. It was just, I'm one of those people who, save, but he just gave us so much insight. And he just talked about the opportunities for wealth all around us, that, you get in a mindset and you don't see that as wealth. You just go to work. And he really addressed that. And he talked about, we have to have the courage, and saving won't get you what you need when it comes to creating wealth. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Hey, listen, what I've learned with my personal experience, because I've had to grow and evolve from my upbringing, that as Pastor Dexter said, saving is good, but we can't stop there. Giving is good. We're expected to give. We can't stop there. Spending is not bad. God expects us to benefit from our labors, and certainly investing is required. So it's understanding that we need all four of those things to build wealth, and that we can't stop at one or the other if we're really going to live the abundant life that the Word promises us, and then we're going to stand on that Word. So, like you said, just a great show, great guest. This is Alfred Edmond Jr. with our special guest host, Dr. Michelle Boone Thornton. You've been listening to Be Lifted Up, your guide to living an abundant life. You can find this episode and other episodes at beliftedupradio.com. That's the letter B, liftedupradio.com. And you can follow us across all social platforms also at the letter B, Lifted Up Radio. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you for the next show.